The cold did not arrive slowly. It came all at once, like something that had been waiting, watching, and finally deciding it was time. By the time the sun disappeared behind the ridge, the valley had already turned silent. Not peaceful silence, but the kind that feels wrong. The kind that presses against your ears until you notice your own breathing. And in the center of that silence, a woman was digging. Not for shelter, not for warmth, but because if she stopped, even for a moment, she knew she would not start again. Her name was Alara Voss, 32 years old. No family nearby. No one coming. No one waiting. The people in the nearest settlement, 8 miles east, had already made their decision about her. She will not last the winter. They said it quietly, not out of cruelty, but certainty, because the valley she chose to live in was not meant for someone working alone. 3 months earlier, the land had looked different. Green, open, almost forgiving. That illusion disappears quickly when the temperature drops below freezing for days at a time. The ground hardens. The wind sharpens. And everything that once felt manageable begins to resist you. Alara learned that faster than most. The cabin she inherited was barely standing. One wall leaned outward just enough to let the wind find its way inside. The roof held, but only just. At night, she could hear the structure shifting, would tightening, then releasing, like it was deciding whether to stay upright or collapse. But she did not leave, because leaving meant going back to a life she had already walked away from. And she was not going back. The first mistake she made was believing the fire would be enough. She fed it constantly. Branches, logs, broken furniture from the cabin itself. Still the cold stayed. Not outside, inside. Sitting in the corners. Waiting in the air. It did not fight the fire. It outlasted it. That realization came one night when she woke up and could not feel her hands. The fire was still burning. Bright and useless. She sat there in the dark, staring at it, understanding something most people never face. The problem was not heat. It was containment. The next morning, she stepped outside and looked at the cabin like it was no longer hers. Not a home. A system that was failing. And systems can be fixed, if you understand where they break. The wind always came from the west. Not occasionally. Boys. It did not matter what the sky looked like. The wind found that direction every single day. And the wall facing it was the weakest part of the structure. Most people would have tried to strengthen the fire. More wood. Bigger flame. Alara chose something else. She chose to fight the wind. There was no one to help her lift beams. No one to hold tools. No one to correct mistakes. So she worked differently. Slower. More deliberate. Every movement planned before it happened. Because energy wasted was energy she could not replace. The valley provided what she needed. Not easily, but enough. Loose stone along the ridge. Dry grass beneath the snow. Broken timber scattered across the land. She collected everything. Not knowing if it would be enough, but knowing that doing nothing would guarantee failure. The first structure she built did not look like much. A low barrier set a few feet away from the cabin wall. Uneven, imperfect, but placed with purpose. The space between the barrier and the cabin, she filled it, layer by layer. Anything that would slow the movement of air. Because she understood something simple. Cold travels. And anything that slows movement buys time. The difference was immediate. Not dramatic, but real. That night, the wind hit the outer barrier first. It lost strength before reaching the cabin. And for the first time, the fire did not feel like it was fighting alone. That was enough. Not comfort, but proof. And proof changes everything. Days turned into repetition. Check the structure. Reinforce weak points. Gather materials. Repeat. There was no room for distraction. No time for doubt. Only action, followed by adjustment. But survival is never just about the environment. It is also about what finds you. On the 10th day, she noticed tracks. Not animal. Boots. 2 people. They had circled the cabin once. Then left. She did not panic. Panic wastes time. Instead, she changed how she moved. Fewer visible supplies. Fire smoke controlled. tools kept inside. 'Cause attention was a risk she could not afford. The next visit came at night. She heard it before she saw it. Snow shifting under weight. Slow, careful steps. Not someone passing by. Someone watching. She did not open the door. Did not speak. Did not move. She waited. Because silence reveals more than action. After a long time, the steps faded. But the message stayed. She was no longer alone out there. The following days became sharper. Every sound mattered. Every change in the snow told a story. And Alara paid attention to all of it. The second wall grew stronger. Higher. Thicker. More deliberate. She was not just blocking wind anymore. She was controlling space. Inside the cabin, something changed. The cold stopped reaching her as quickly. The air held warmth longer. And for the first time, she slept without waking every hour. But progress brings attention. And attention brings problems. They returned again. This time during daylight. 2 men. Not desperate. Not lost. Calculated. They stood outside the barrier, studying it. Not impressed. But curious. "You have done a lot of work," one of them said. Alara did not respond immediately. She let the silence stretch. Because silence forces people to reveal more than they intend. "What do you want?" she asked. Simple. Direct. They exchanged a look. "We are offering help," the other said. But the tone did not match the words. Help does not arrive quietly. Help does not circle your home at night. "I do not need it," she replied. One of them stepped closer to the barrier. Tested it with his foot. Not aggressively. But enough to measure it. "You will use it." Then they left. That night, she did not sleep. Not from fear. From calculation. The barrier needed more than strength. It needed purpose. The next morning she changed the design. Narrowed the entrance. Raised the outer layer. Reinforced weak angles. Everything became intentional. She was not building shelter anymore. She was building control. Days passed. The temperature dropped further. But inside, it held. And then the storm came. Not wind alone. Not snow alone. Together. Relentless. The valley disappeared. Visibility dropped to nothing. Sound became distorted. Direction lost meaning. Inside the cabin, Alara sat still. Listening. Measuring. Waiting. The outer wall took the impact first. Snow piled against it. Wind pressed into it. Testing every gap. But it held. Not perfectly. But enough. Hours passed. Then more. Time lost shape. At some point during the storm, she heard something else. Not wind. Not wood. A voice, distant, but real. She did not move, because stepping outside would mean disappearing. So she stayed. And the storm passed. When the sky cleared, the valley had changed. Everything buried. Everything reset. But the cabin was still standing. The wall still intact. And Alara, still there. That was the moment everything shifted. Not outside. Inside her. Because survival is not just about making it through. It is about realizing you can. The men did not return after that. Maybe the storm changed their plans. Maybe the wall did. It did not matter. Because Alara had already solved the real problem. Not the cold. Not the isolation. But dependence. She no longer needed the land to be kind. She had learned how to exist. Even when it was not. Weeks later, the first signs of change appeared. Not dramatic. Subtle. But real. Snow softened. Water moved. Air shifted. Spring was coming. And when it arrived, it found her ready. Not waiting. Not hoping. Prepared. She stepped outside one morning and looked at the valley. The same place people said she would not survive. Now it looked different. Not because it had changed, but because she had. The wall still stood. The cabin still held. And for the first time, there was no urgency in her movements. Only intention. Because she understood something most people never do. Survival is not about reacting to danger. It is about removing the conditions that allow it to defeat you. And once you do that, everything else becomes manageable. The valley did not become easier. The cold did not become weaker. But it was no longer in control. She was.